Welcome, 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 everyone. Welcome to Ascend's Women in Leadership series featuring Katie Stanton. She is the founder and general partner at Moxxie Ventures. I've been following Katie for a very long time, and I've already learned so much from her from a distance. She has been an exec at some of the best organizations, including Twitter, Google, and the Obama administration. And in particular, I've been really impressed by how Katie has built up her career, a very, very impressive career by all standards, while at the same time raising a tight-knit family. This conversation is extra special is because we're going to talk about topics like failure, strategies that Katie used to build her career while supporting her family. And these are, really, it's special because these are topics that often many of us struggle with, but we never talk about, or we think about it endlessly, but we never openly talk about. And we're here to change that today. So I am so pumped. It's going to be such a fun, awesome conversation. Hi, everyone. I am Shivani Berry. I am the CEO and founder of Ascend, where we offer an online leadership program for women. It's a leadership program that I wish I had access to when I was making that transition into management. Our mission at Ascend is to elevate 10,000 women into leadership. It's a big way we're going to see the change that we need to see in today's workplaces. And we've been doing it. We've had women from top companies like Google, Slack, DoorDash come out of the program feeling more confident and be able to get promoted faster. So much of the program is inspired by senior leaders who have been in your shoes and have overcome these challenges. That's why I love hosting these fireside chats with amazing leaders to get to hear the backstory. How did they get to where they are? What are their struggles and how do they navigate that? Katie, thank you so much for joining us. I'm really excited for our conversation.
Thanks for having me, Shivani.
Awesome. So today we're going to chat for about 30 minutes and then do Q&A. So if along the way you have any questions that you want Katie to cover, you can click on the bottom right of your Zoom screen and click on the Q&A icon to add or upvote questions. We want this to be fun and valuable for you. So if something resonates, then please put in the chat. Reminder that when you do chat, please change your settings to everyone instead of panelists and attendees. So that way we can all see it. All right, Katie, let's get started. So first, I'd love for you to share a little bit about your career. You have a really fascinating career, an inspiring career journey. Can you share with us a brief overview of how you've come to where you are today?
Sure. Thank you again for having me here. It's great to meet all of you. My career started like many people's careers, which are a series of trial and error. And I thought I wanted to go in a nonprofit originally and maybe work at the State Department or UNICEF or some kind of international global organization. And as I had a couple of experiences in that world, I realized while I intended to do well, I didn't have the skills to actually make a positive impact. So realized I really needed to go and figure out those skills. I was pretty uncreative and went into banking. And I did banking for a number of years and learned a lot. It was actually really good skill building. But I remember being on a plane and talking to somebody about a business trip I was going to, which was a coal mine that the bank was investing in. And as I was telling the person where I was going, I realized oh my God, I am way off course. I want to save the planet. This is terrible. I've just lost my way somehow. And it was a really important moment as I look back where I realized how important pride is. And if you're sitting next to, a stranger somewhere, and as you talk about what you do, you better be proud of it. And this becomes a running theme later on in my life, especially when I had kids. So I realized, okay, I need to step out of this course. This is not the right path for me. And I remember going on my Bloomberg terminal and the internet was just kind of coming out in the late 90s. And I did a search on Yahoo and I had this bubble that kind of came up above me where I was like, oh my God, how cool would it be to work at a company called Yahoo? That just sounds cool. It sounds fun. And they were just starting to build their finance product. And I realized I have the skills. I know the world of finance. I mean, a little bit, but I know enough that I can be helpful. And I found a friend of a friend of a friend and pitched them on why they should have somebody with a banking background working on Yahoo Finance. And they were just kind of like, all right, weirdo, come on out. And so my husband and I moved out from New York to California, and it was life-changing. All of a sudden I realized you could love your job. I didn't think it was possible. I love the energy. I love the impact. I love the speed. I love the people. And it really became this formation for me of, you need to work with the best people on a product that you really love, where you're proud to work on it. And so those become my three big criteria of any job I had. So after working at Yahoo for a few years and had a few children, can talk about that later, I thought, well, what could be better than Yahoo? I'd kind of run my course there, and Google was the only answer. And I was lucky enough to find a role at Google. I was at Google for 6 years. While I was there, I received this amazing opportunity from President Obama's team to join the White House and being part of a team of people to bring technology into the government. I thought, well, maybe this is how I connect the dots. This is how I do this international global organization thing. So I worked at the White House for about a year and then switched over to the State Department, which was also amazing and life-changing, working with Secretary Clinton. But while I was there, I still missed Silicon Valley. I still missed building. I had dragged my family out to DC, live in DC, and they all wanted to return to California. So, thought, well, what could possibly be better? And I knew the Twitter people and the founders and the team, and had been tweeting quite a bit. My Twitter handle at the time was Kate@State, and that was pretty fun. And Dick Costolo and Evan Williams were like, yeah, come out here. We need somebody to run international at Twitter. I thought, oh my God, what an even better job. That sounds so cool. So we all ricocheted back to California, worked at Twitter for about 6 years. It was a job of a lifetime. It was so fun, so interesting. What a privilege to be able to work on a product with so many amazing people and delivering a service that so many people could use. Really, the world's town square. And after I'd been at Twitter for 6 years, thought, well, what could possibly be better than this? I've kind of like peaked professionally, I felt. And the thing I learned, so people, product, and pride were my 3 big criteria. But the 4th thing that became more evident was impact. At this point, what kind of a positive impacts can I make at these companies? And apologies, it looks like now we have some construction going on in my house, so everyone can relate. The work from home thing is annoying. Is this too annoying? Should I go in another room or, okay. So I thought of people, product, pride, but impact. I want to make sure I'm making a positive impact. And so I took a little bit of a detour and worked at a company called Color Genomics, which was trying to improve healthcare by giving people accessible access to their genetics, which I think is the blueprint of our life, and what a great way to personalize our healthcare going forward. And so I joined, this is the earliest company I'd worked at, and I became CMO, and it was super interesting, and I love the team, and I think they're going to be very successful in what they do, especially in the world we live in now with COVID. And I was there for about 3 years. And this is getting long, but I promise it's almost, I'm just old. So I have a lot of little.
No, this is great. I want the detail. It's
okay.
Yeah, to provide so much context is great.
Okay. And then that led me to where I am now. And so, while I was at Google and then more actively at Twitter, I started to angel invest, and thought that was just so interesting, and really enjoyed spending time with founders, and realized I loved early stage investing. And I thought really hard about people, product, pride, and impact, and what was the best way for me to make an impact, a positive impact in the world at this point in my career. And realized I wanted to do venture full time. I wanted to be a big girl investor, and I just needed more money to do that. And so I went out and raised my first fund, which and created Moxxie Ventures. And so now we have 2 funds. The first one was 25 million, and the second fund that we're investing in out of right now is 85 million. I'll pause.
Oh, that's really great. This is perfect. I want to dig into so much of basically everything here. I would love to talk about more about some of the failures that you have along the way. So, as we both know, is we often don't talk about our failures, but failures are a big part of what's helped us be successful. And you had this incredible journey. I love that it's very windy, or I guess it's very non-traditional. And that's a huge inspiration, because often people think you just have to follow one set path, and that's actually not true. You're actually probably better when you have this windy journey, because there's so many things you pull from it. And so, but let's focus a little bit about some of the mistakes or failures that you've had along the way. What's a failure that you've had in your career? How has it helped you grow, or how has it impacted your career? And any advice you have for us on it?
Yeah. When you first asked me this question, it's funny, I don't know if I think of anything as a failure. I think they might be misses, or more opportunities, right? Maybe I didn't get a job at some point, but I would learn oh, well, maybe I wasn't qualified for that job, and kind of self-reflective, what would have been that? And some of these misses, I think about misses all the time as a VC. Like you miss a company, you should have invested in this one. Like, what information did I need at that time to make a better decision? So I think it's natural to have these misses. Like either we're missing information, we're missing courage, we're missing timing, and these things don't always happen at the same time. But the best thing we can do is to learn from them. So for example, like, yeah, I could have gone to a nonprofit earlier in those days, but I realized, after I'd been there for, tried a couple of these roles, that I just wasn't qualified. I just didn't have the skills. And it's not really a failure. I wasn't ready and I didn't have those skills. So I needed to do something about it. One of the best things I think I've done looking backwards, and something I would encourage all of you to do, is to take those big leaps that seem really, really scary. And a lot of times those big leaps are going abroad or taking a job in a different place. And that can seem really scary. But I think as you look back and, and I'm sure there's a great quote out there that better articulates this, that you don't sit on your deathbed and worry about like the mistakes you made. You think about the choices, like, why didn't I take that opportunity? Why was I so chicken? And so don't be chicken, like go for those opportunities. And it's frankly, one of the reasons why I called Moxxie, because my original thought was I want to be a big girl VC. And so I started talking to all the VCs in Silicon Valley, and some were great, some were less great. And then a few of my friends were like, pardon my language, were like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, you know how to invest. Like, you have a great network of people. You should do this yourself. And I was like, I don't know how to raise money. Like, I've never done this before. And like, well, have some courage. And I realized like, oh my God, like I need some courage. And here I am telling my daughters, like, you can do anything you want, like, go for it. And I wasn't doing that myself when I needed to drink my own Kool-Aid. So I called it Moxxie, and then also added the double X for the female chromosome.
I love that. I think you're so right. I love the framing around the misses. I think, especially these days, how we were talking about right before we hopped on, I think it's so easy to look at Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn and feel like, oh, this person's got it all together. And you're right. And we feel like we're falling behind, but actually the misses are actually what help us get, like, get even further. I was sharing with you before how my husband and I moved to Berlin from San Francisco for 4 years. And that was really scary in the moment, like moving, just quitting your job and moving to a country that we'd never been to. Starting Ascend was really scary, like taking a bet on myself and bootstrapping it. And so, but these have been life-changing decisions that I'm like so grateful. They've been like the best decisions. And so I couldn't agree more around just lean into your misses and kind of go forward from there. How now, as like you have that insight, how do you make sure you don't have as many misses, or how do you make sure you lean into your misses more going forward?
Yeah, I think a lot of it goes back to just genuine self-care, and just really, paying attention to, what you can learn from these opportunities. One of, kind of my misses, like it's really hard on marriages, right? Especially as you're working, it's tough because you're spending less time with your partner, and then you have a kid, and then you're spending less time with your partner and maybe your kid, and then maybe you have 2 or 3 kids or 4 kids, and you're like magnificently outnumbered, and your time gets so precious. And so now I'm at a point where my kids are a little bit older and they're on their own, and that's great. I mean, they still need me and everything, but you realize like, okay, like you need time for yourself, and that self-care and exercise and going to the doctor and preventive medicine and taking your vitamins, wearing your sunscreen, all these things. And I went so long without that self-care, just be like, oh, I'll work out this weekend, or, I'll take care of this, later, or I'll push off that mammogram. Don't do that. Like do all these things. And so, I think self-care is really, really important and underestimated. And we all will go through, it is inevitable that we'll all go through different slings and arrows of life that are going to be tough. And we will lose loved ones. We'll see loved ones struggle. We will like lose, have tough things financially. Like it's just inevitable. These things are happening. And the best way that you can be prepared for them is by making sure you've taken care of yourself first, and getting the mental health support and the physical health support that you really, really need to be able to then reinvest that in both your career and your family.
I love that. Thank you so much for calling that out. I think self-care feels like a buzzword these days. And so it's actually helpful to hear, like, here's how it actually helped you, and here's why it's so important. It's a good reminder, especially coming from someone who's achieved what you've achieved. It's just like, hey, part of the reason why I'm here is because of that self-care. What's your favorite self-care?
Right now, my thing is, so I live in Boulder, Colorado, and I live near the mountains, and I try to go on a hike every day with my dog. And so we try to do that. I'm a little bit of a wimp because it does get a little cold. So, but we try to go up there, and I have two dogs. One has 3 legs, so he doesn't make the cut. He only gets a brief little walk, but the 4-legged one, he gets to go on the hike. And I find it's so great physically. It's a reminder of sort of our and our time on this planet, the beauty of Mother Nature, and just being out and getting some fresh air. That's probably the best thing I do for myself.
That's amazing. I'd love to talk to you a little bit about, being a working mom. Especially, I've noticed that as women, especially working moms, a big conversation topic becomes work-life balance. But the male leader is never going to ask that question about work-life balance.
Right.
So we're not going to focus on that here either. I'd love to hear about, how has becoming a mom been an inflection point in your career? How do you feel like it's made you, how do you think it's helped in your career?
I think it's helped me with prioritization, with empathy, and with just kind of like an emotional intelligence of things, if you know what I mean. So, prioritization, whatever job I would take, I would look at the opportunity cost. Like, is it worth being away from my children all day? Like, is it worth that time? Because this time is so precious, and it goes by, and everyone will say, and it sounds so cliche, it goes by really fast, but it really does. So it's really important to prioritize that time and make sure whatever job it is worth it. And because you're worth it, right? And the second thing with empathy, just, I don't know, as a parent, I think, most parents are pretty empathetic to certain things. And I remember looking backwards to those times that I would panic because I had to get to daycare by 5 o'clock, and they would charge you $1 per minute if you were late. And I would also notice some of the other parents would be like, blah, 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 on these meetings are going on. I'm like, oh my God, I was like stressed out so much about it. And so now, as a parent, just having empathy for other people's needs. And I think the world has actually gotten better because we've all been at home and figuring out like that kind of balance at home. But empathy is really important. And I think it's a great lesson for our kids too. So as a working mom, I didn't have the best of care. I live far away from my family, and we really struggled trying to find, affordable childcare. Couldn't really afford a full-time nanny at the time. And so we had our local, daycare and picking up and back and forth. But one thing I did have to my advantage is that I do have a really large extended family. So whenever I had a business trip, I would always take one of my kids with me and then plop them with an aunt or an uncle or a cousin or my mom or my dad, anyone who would take that kid. And it was great for me to have this special time with my child, and amazing for my kid to get to know their extended family a little bit better. It ended up being a little bit expensive because I have to take them with me, but it was totally worth it. And I look back at all these trips that I've had now with them, and it's been great for them, great for all of us, and for my kids to see me working and to know, that you can, like, especially for women, like you can still work and you still can have a family. It's hard. You just need resources. And maybe this is the other lesson too I want to share. Like, one of the things not my mistake, my miss, is that I was really stubborn about getting help. So, my family grew up without too much extra stuff. And my mom worked nights as a nurse, and she was a single mom. And so we never had a lot of extra. And so I was always afraid that would happen to me. And so I was always afraid of spending too much on like what I thought was extra. And so like, oh, cleaning lady, like maybe like once a month. But I realized like I get so stressed out if my house is messy, and it is worth it. Like, outsource whatever you can to the point that you can afford it, and you'll make more money later. But those things to give you sort of like peace of mind. And when you get home from work, that you're not sitting there like folding a million, things of laundry and worried about dinner, that have other people help you as much as you can afford to.
So true. I have the same mentality as you, because so my family immigrated from India when I was 6, and we didn't have a lot to start with at all. And so it was the same thing. Like, we wouldn't really spend money. And it's really, I remember even like we wouldn't order a Coke at dinner unless it was like a special occasion, because it just felt like a splurge. And I brought the same mentality, but now I'm really trying to shift it to think about like the ROI, and it's, like outsource, get a cleaning lady, because then you just get the time back to do something else. And so it's really nice hearing you like have a similar struggle and have like how you've been thinking about it around it.
Yeah, I mean, now we have Instacart and like TaskRabbit and all these other amazing tools. Like, it is a great time, I think, to be a working parent.
Yeah, definitely. I see a question in the chat related to what we're talking about right now is in the Q&A, how do you balance making big leaps in motherhood? And so the person in the chat is talking about, like, I found that taking big leaps usually means more time away from the family. So what are your non-starters? How do you think about that?
Yeah, it's a great question. So big leaps are hard. The most important thing, especially as a parent, is to have the right partner and that they're willing to step up and do that big leap for you. And so I had a few moments in my career that my husband would take them with me, and he took the load off. And so we spent, when I was at Google, I really wanted a year abroad experience, at least a year abroad experience with my kids. I wanted them to understand like the world, to speak another language, and just be these global citizens. And living in Silicon Valley, like just such a bubble. And so when we were at Google, I pitched to my boss, like, we're building all these tools and services in India. Maybe I should be there and be closer to the team. And she was like, yeah, sure. So we moved to Bangalore for 3 months, and my kids went to a Montessori school there, and the only non-Indian kids, and it was so great for them to feel like to be a minority and to learn a whole other culture. And my husband would have to take them back and forth to school, and while I was working, and that was a lot for him, and he left his job so I could do this, and we could do this as a family. And we had 2 other opportunities. One, we were in Europe for another 3 months, and then we had another big experience when we went to France. And so I was like, India was really cool. We didn't stay that long. My kids didn't learn another language. And at Twitter, my job was international anyway. And so I told Dick Hassel, I'm like, maybe it makes sense for me to live in one of our international offices. And he was like, okay, Dublin or Singapore. I was like, well, what about Paris? He was like, wait, you just want to live in Paris? Maybe a little bit. And so we all moved, and my husband left his job again. So we could all live as a family in France. And so my kids all went to French schools and learned French a little bit to a lot of it. And it was just great. But taking those big leaps does require a lot of effort, a lot of logistics, a leap of faith, and like a true partner to help you, go for and take care of the things that you can't.
Oh, such great advice. I think especially around that, like being real about you can't do it all. I think so often like that becomes a narrative, and that's actually not real. So like being cognizant of what's the effort, and that key partner, having a good partner around supporting makes a ton of sense. And I definitely experienced the same thing on my end. And, I want to dig into this topic a bit more around navigating life as a working mom. You've already been so open about sharing this, so thank you so much. It's so many valuable nuggets that we don't usually have visibility into. So I just want to say that, thank you so much for being so open here, and would love to hear more from you about, what are some of the strategies that you've used to build up your career while continuing to raise a family and be there for your family? How have you been able to thrive in both parts? Any advice for us?
Yes. Well, in addition to getting the help that you need, I would say, second, find a mentor. Find somebody that you admire and that you can meet with maybe 4 times a year, and you come up with the agenda and ask for advice. And that sounds very easy, and I know it's not, but I was lucky enough to have 2 mentors in my career. One was John Donahoe, who's now the CEO of Nike. And he was like a gift from the heavens, where I happen to know his wife from the Obama administration. And he approached me and said, Katie, I know how hard it is for working women, and I would like to be your mentor. And let's do this, 4 times a year. I have no skin in the game. And I was like, oh my God, how lucky am I? And he was phenomenal. And to this day, I just think he's one of the best persons on the planet. That doesn't happen normally. I got very, very lucky. So make your luck and find that person and just go after them and say, I will not, bother you in between. And this is the time commitment. And I'm sure someone awesome will be your mentor. The second person is Dan Rosenzweig, who's the CEO of Chegg, who is just the menschiest of the mensches. And he is always looking out for me. I know I can call him in a heartbeat for any kind of advice, personal, professional. So find those people that are a little bit ahead of you that you admire and ask for advice. Like, don't be afraid of asking for help. Maybe those one and two are related. And then the third is find your tribe, and find that tribe, and probably with women. I would say, like, I have a couple of clusters of women and different text groups that are all pretty hilarious. But at Twitter, I had a group called #Angels, where there's 6 of us. We were all executives in different parts of the organization, and most importantly, all really good friends. And we started this investment collective so we could all become better investors ourselves. And if you look at our text chat, it goes through everything from like, hey, here's this great deal, to, looking for childcare, COVID questions, cancer treatment. Like, we go through all kinds of life world things going on. So they've been great. And then I have another, several groups of friends, some from childhood, some from, from Google, some from my local neighborhood. And these different groups of women, we just all help each other with various like different things that happen. You need help with pickup, you need help on a deal, you're just having a bad day. Like, find those groups and invest in them and treasure them, because they will help you throughout your life.
I love that so much. So I have a smart group. After I graduated from Harvard for a business school, me and like 5 other women who moved back to San Francisco formed a book club. And very quickly we stopped talking about the books and we started talking about like careers, and now people are having kids. And so similar, our text thread is just like a bunch of different things. And it's been so helpful just having that tribe. And that was a big reason it inspired me to start the leadership program, because like, I want other people to have access to that kind of community if you don't have access to it on a day-to-day, in addition to be able to learn the skills. So I think that's super helpful. How, and I love the mentorship. Is there anything else that you kind of do on a, like, to be there for your kids through all of this? Maybe there's not, just maybe that covers all of it. No, I'm sure there's more. But is there anything else that, like, any other thing that you think we should be keeping in mind as we're trying to like balance the two?
It's funny, maybe oversimplifying. I felt like as a younger mother, the answer to most things that my kids would ask me would be no. Can I do this? No, that's dangerous. Can I do that? No, that's more dangerous. And now this new chapter that I'm in, or the current chapter that I'm in, the answer is always yes. And so when my kids are like, Mom, do you want to have dinner? Yes. Mom, can I go, with you on this business trip to New York? Yes, because that time is increasingly precious. And, now we don't live together. I have 3 kids now in college, and, one happens to live in Boulder. I kind of followed her here, which she wasn't immediately excited about, but now she loves it because she comes over for free meals. But the other 2, whenever they want to spend time with me, I'm always a yes. And I'll always prioritize that and move everything else around.
That's awesome. We have another question in the chat around, what do you think stops us from believing we can do anything? We teach it to our kids, but as adults, we start to lose that belief. I love that question. I think it's so true. And so any advice for, what do you think stops us from believing we can do anything? And how would we move past that?
Yeah. I think it kind of goes back to, the Moxxie of things, right? That we're usually our worst enemies. Like, oh no, I can't, or I shouldn't, should I, go out with these friends when I have all these emails to answer and all this laundry to do, and I really should do these other things. So it's usually ourselves getting in the way. And it's a tough lesson. I think, a lot of women, and to overgeneralize, we're people pleasers, and we always want to say yes to everything. And I struggle with this all the time. So I got in this period of time, especially now that I'm a VC, you want to, your reputation is everything. You always want to be helpful. And I got in a period of time where every cold email I would get, I would answer it. And even if it meant like staying up an extra 2 hours, because I felt like that, like someone, gave me the courtesy of emailing, I'm going to give them the courtesy back. And then I would find like, I'm exhausted and I haven't worked out, or I haven't, checked in with my kids because I'm just trying to please everybody. And I saw this Instagram ad, which is like, stop trying to please everyone. You're not tequila. And now I think about that all the time, and it's true. And, you have to really prioritize your time, and it's okay to say no to the things that, not that they don't matter, they may just matter less. And, maybe one of the things my daughter told me when she was younger, my daughter Kiki, she was maybe 4 or 5, and I would ask her if she wanted to do something with me. And she was a very polite kid. And she would say, maybe next time. And so now that's my new thing. If it's not no, it's like, okay, maybe next time we can do that.
Smart kid. I love it. That's awesome. I also feel like that. When someone sends me an email, I feel like to respond back. But you realize if someone doesn't respond back to me, I'm not offended. I'm like, okay, you have your own stuff. So just because I sent you an email doesn't mean that you're obligated to respond back. And you're right. It's just, you have to do what's best for you. I see another question around like, how do you motivate yourself when things don't go your way?
I think, especially raising money, when I was raising my first fund and it was only me, when someone would say no, obviously I would take it personally because they weren't saying no because they didn't invest in this particular sector. It was like me. And that was kind of tough to take. But then I realized, like, don't think about it as a no, it's a no now. And then just move on. And so moving on and just going forward really is helpful, right? So you can't dwell on the no's and the rejections and the misses and the failures because you're going to make yourself nutso. So just keep moving forward, learn from them. And when you get sad, it's okay to cry and reach out to your friends and do those self-care things. If it's a walk, if it's a run, if it's skiing, if it's reading, find those things that keep moving you forward and lean on those that you love.
So good. That's so true. We just, drive ourselves in that. It's just, and then you don't get anywhere out of it if you just keep ruminating on the nose. Like nothing happens. Only you lose out. And the other person is like left or not even thinking about you anymore.
Exactly. Yeah. Like don't put the power in the other hand, like own that power and reinvest in yourself.
Yeah, that's so good. I love these questions that are coming through the Q&A. So if you have more questions, feel free to drop them in. It's like bottom right Zoom icon. Katie, as we wrap things up, what's one piece of career advice that you'd have for us?
For career advice, take big leaps. And then the other one might be have a major and a minor. Just like when you're in college and you're studying, maybe you're studying biology, but you're kind of interested in international affairs. They may not go together, but if they stimulate you and interest you, do that. And so in your career, for me at least, what I found, like as I was working as an operator, as my major, I found it so interesting to angel invest as my minor. And that cross-pollination was really helpful to me to both expand my network and, deepen my knowledge of different things and to solve problems differently. And then as you go through your career, you'll have lots of those opportunities. It may be as an investor, it may be as a board member, it may be as an advisor, it may be as a volunteer, whatever it is, using your brilliance and your capacity and your energy and all the things I know all of you have to lots of different things. Having that major and minor, I think, is really useful.
That's so good. I would only think about that in college terms, but you're right. You could do it throughout your career around it. And, as like speaking of major and minor and kind of like, and then also just kind of how you built yourself up and you're on the board of companies and you do all these things. How do you put yourself out there for those opportunities? Or some of them probably fall in your lap, but I imagine a lot of them is you're raising your hand or positioning yourself. Like, how do you think about putting yourself out there?
Yeah, know this, that most of the best opportunities don't fall in our laps, right? If it's a job, no one's gonna be like, hey, I have this amazing, very lucrative job for you, and I'm gonna give it to you and whatever you want. Like, yes, like that does happen to some people. And a lot of that is luck and random, but whatever, like for the most part, it doesn't happen. So we all have to be really proactive and raise our hands. If it's for that dream job, if it's for that board position, if it's for that mentorship. I talked to a lot of my friends about board positions because I got lucky with both of my board positions when I lived in France. The Vivendi team approached me, and only because I was one of the few Americans living and working in Paris that had a media background. So I kind of fit their profile. But I got luckier when Dan Rosenzweig was my mentor for a long time. And then he joined the board of Time. He's like, you should join too. I was like, oh my gosh, like that's awesome. So these paths will start to lead to another. So if you want to join a board, think about, okay, what boards, what companies are going to be worth my time that I'm really passionate about, and find people who work at those companies, find those other board members and tell them you're interested, find recruiters, be their best friend and say like, I would like to join the following boards, and like, here's my board profile. Here's why I'm ready. Here's what I can offer. Make it easy for them to recommend you. And then with mentors, go think about like, gosh, in a dream scenario, who would be, like the top 10, my personal board of advisors that could be my mentor, and just ask. Worst case, they say no. And, and the better thing is that they say, no, not now, or no, but I have somebody else you should meet and they would be perfect for you. You just never know. And so you just have to put yourself out there.
That's so good. Yeah, just ask. I've definitely asked for all my growth opportunities. And I don't think I would have gotten them, or at least I wouldn't have gotten them as fast as I did if I hadn't asked. But definitely jealous of those people who were like, I got this like dream opportunity and it just got landed in my lap and I didn't have to interview for it. I'm like, oh, I wish I could be that person. But even if I'm not, okay, let me just go ask and see what happens.
Even better when you've hunted for it and you've gotten it. Like,
there's a satisfaction there. You're like, I worked for this.
Totally. Like you earned it and you worked for it. And that's amazing. And what a great lesson for your children too.
Yeah, for sure. This is so good. Katie, thank you so much for joining us. And thank you so much for sharing all your insights. And it's just like, it's a lot of things, like I was saying earlier, like we don't ever really talk about, and it's so helpful to hear from you and just that vulnerability. So huge thank you. I think it's really landed with everyone joining in. I see a lot of like people relating to that. We got a lot of really good questions inspired by you. So big thank you for joining us. This has been awesome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. And big thank you to all of you for listening in, for all your great questions and the discussion. If you really enjoyed today's conversation, you're like, I want to start developing a lot of these skills we talked about today around how do you influence, how do you lead, how do you advocate for yourself? And you want to be able to do it with your own personal board of advisors, your own tribe, like Katie was talking about. I'd like for you to come join us in Ascend's leadership program for women. Our upcoming cohort starts next month, and it's an amazing group of people from Google, Slack, DoorDash, Salesforce, and from around the world. So if you're interested in joining, you can apply. We'll drop the application link in the chat. It takes less than 5 minutes, and it's just, I'm so pumped to get started. With that, we will send out the recording for today's conversation. And Katie, thank you again. I know you have a busy schedule, so I super appreciate you carving out the time and just sharing a lot of your wisdom and life experience with us. Thank you. This has been awesome.
Thanks for having me. Take care, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Take care.